Hi, I'm Michael DiBenigno from Flow Immersive, and I'm here today to go through a story about life expectancy. And along the way, I'm actually going to do this by teaching you how to build a flow using the end flow presentation. And so we're going to be recording on a multitude of devices here to sort of show you the gambit of how you can do this. I'm going to be in a Quest 2. I'm also recording over here on an iPad. My wife is recording here on an iPhone 12 Max, thank you. And then over here we have an iPhone 10, as well as I'm on the computer, or recording on the computer. So let's start to dive in, shall we? So I'm going to put this on and join you guys, and let's actually start to dive in. So let's pull down this screen, and this is what you will initially see when you enter the Flow editor. And you'll do that at a.flow.gl as part of our private beta list right now, which just came out on Tuesday. So thank you guys for joining on Tuesday. And what you'll see is when you join, we will automatically create a swarm for you. And that is the main data visualization object that we have within Flow. And to interact with that, you will either upload a CSV file, or in this case, we're just going to select from our library. And so by clicking on that library button, we'll pull up this menu and actually select the life expectancy data. And right away, you will start to see something come to life. And we're looking at every dot here is a row of the data set. It is a combination of country, year, and life expectancy, as well as a few other attributes like income and things like that. And there's things we can do here just to give you a sense of what you can adjust. If you adjust here the height, you'll see this start to collapse. We can adjust the width and make it wider. And we can also add in a color scheme. And sorry, it looks like it's skipping ahead twice. We're working through a few bugs, so apologies for that. But here we can start to add in an actual color scheme. So it assigns categorical variables to a specific color. Here what we can do is actually start to dive into the story itself. And to do this, we're basically adding back in the width axis. And the next thing I'd like to point out is adding clusters. And so when you enable clustering, it's going to take any dot that is exactly on the same position. In this case, we're only looking at one dimension, which is this X dimension, where we're looking at each continent and looking at the number of data points that we have associated with each. And so now let's increase the y-axis, or add in the y-axis by adding in or checking the height box and selecting the right attribute. And here we're now looking at basically the distribution of dots, because we have clustering on, amongst the different continents. And so we can start to see some of the span. One of the things that sort of stood out to me was we could see sort of some larger amounts of dots in the Americas as well as Africa that are in the lower portions. There's sort of like one distribution down here, but worthy of looking into further. And then with another click here, we're going to add our first filter. So here what we're doing is adding a filter to look at what contains this string, which is average. And so now we're looking at just the average of all of the different countries in our data set. And then if we add in, and sorry, jumped ahead here. So if we start to add in here the depth dimension, what we can do is, apologies for there we go. So if we add in the depth dimension, we'll see this line start to take shape. And this in some ways, sort of kind of an amazing story, where life expectancy for the first 100 years was pretty flat, but it's really over the last 100 years that we've seen this huge increase in life expectancy, which is kind of an amazing feat. And we can also see this huge decline here, and we'll get to that in a moment, but that's the 1918 Spanish flu, so the last pandemic to hit the world. And so to that point, how can we add some information so we can actually see what's going on? What we can do is add these interactions where you can add a 3D text object. And so we are defining that object over here by first selecting the columns. So we're selecting the columns we want to look at. And then within each of those, we have additional attributes to one, add some text before the actual value itself, add a precision level. So you'll see how this is rounding to the millionths. And then we can also adjust the format. So we're adding a $sign here. So you have a lot of control in terms of what shows. And so by doing so, we then create this, right? This is our on-select text block. And so these are all the attributes that we defined in that pop-up. And so now as I explore, I can see in 1918, that's for the average of our countries that we're presenting is 32 million people, and that life expectancy dropped to 26.8 in that year from around 38. So pretty drastic there. And to point out where we are today, up in the near 75 or 74. And so let's look more just at 1918. And so here we're going to, looks like it jumped ahead again. Apologies for that. But what we're going to do is we're going to add another filter in to look at just the years between, what are we doing? Between 1915 and 1921. And so by doing that, we can now isolate that drop in 1918, and we're filtering that, or that axis is now updated or squished back down. And then let's update that filter and basically cancel out, sorry, skip ahead too still, and we'll cancel out or delete one of the filters, which was looking at just average. So by Xing out that filter, we can then see all of the different countries represented. And so we see this pretty consistent pattern, right? This decline pretty much amongst all countries in our data set. So while we saw that average decline in 1918, the fact that it is omnipresent through all countries, I think is quite telling in terms of the impact of a global pandemic. And so then if we then expand these out, so we're not just looking at that little time span, but looking at from 1800s till today, we can see that consistent, movements up and living longer, that our children are more likely to survive. And that's, also within this data set are some of humanity's biggest failures. And I'm going to zoom in here and, look at Rwanda in 1994, where life expectancy dropped down to 12.6 years. The Rwandan genocide. And I think you can explore this data set to find all sorts of stories. And here we're expanding these out and now putting them in order based on life expectancy today, highest to lowest. So up on the top here is Japan. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted from the story. Over here, what we've added is highlights. And so what you're seeing is that highlight capability where I'm interacting with the data set. And if I click away, it will re-highlight everything. Now, if you look at the attributes, we're basically turning on highlights. We're adding in this first selector to say it's going to turn white if it's a match, and if it's a miss, it's going to turn it black, as well as you can adjust the sizes. So anyways, those are the attributes that we're setting, and that's how you're able to get this additional level of interaction, where now I can more clearly point out a trend. And hi, Moose, thanks for joining me here. So anyways, I think that's a really powerful mechanic that, especially for these interactions, can make it more meaningful. So let me unselect this and move forward again. And here what we're looking at is just the last day. So we're looking at just 2018. So we're filtering all that data and just saying, okay, where are we today? And the reason we're doing that is that we can, one, just get a sense for, okay, where are we? And what I'm doing is turning the whole axis on 90 degrees. I didn't point that out last time, but it's rotating at 90 degrees. And so here we can see, life expectancy throughout the globe, and realize that the colors are matching of the continent that these countries are a part of. And then we can actually throw them onto the map. And we do that by first creating a map. So we create a map and then define the topology. Yes. So there's all sorts of attributes here that we're basically creating, but you just add the map with the add map button down there. Sorry, I forgot to point that out. So that's where we add an object is any objects. You can either search through objects you've created as well as adding objects. And the other thing to note is this timeline, how you interact with it. A single click will basically take you to that step in time and select the object that you've created. And double clicking will turn on and off the visibility of the object on that layer. So I realize I sort of skipped over that, but here is that object for the map. And you can see it's visible just on this last step that we've created. And so within here, I guess I glossed over how you connect the dots into the map. And so what we do is go back to the swarm. And on the swarm, we're going to adjust the type to change that to map to region. And then mapping, using that map we created, map 1, and then attaching the region to the country. And so it maps each of these to the right country. And then we also have added a label, which I don't know if I have that shown here. Apologies if I skipped it, but anyways, we updated the label here, so we'll have to be able to, I'll show you guys the labels at a future time here, but we can update that to say, here, what is life expectancy? We don't need to see the country name, we can now just see life expectancy directly. And yeah, so I think I added one last connection here, but that is about it. So hopefully this was helpful and illustrative in terms of me presenting Flow, using Flow, and to help you guys get with the flow. That is it for me. Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye. I think I said flow like a billion times right there.